Waqas, Abdullah, and you're watching my show. World is transforming again from the unipolarity to the multipolar. Many regional powers are emerging on the canvas of international politics. Complex interdependence has taken its place, and due to its phenomenon, old rivals are now making alliances and friendship. The increasing trends of the multipolarity have been allied with these three factors: the end of the US hegemony, the peaceful rise of the China and other emerging states in the different regions, and the shifting nature of the power structure from the unipolarity to the multipolarity. Some state has been portrayed as a third pole of the third polar world in 2050, yet is the constant rise to determine the Asian stability over there. Some states are burn the bridges which either and some are going to be make the largest hegemony over there. Today, the topic of our discussion is the shifting of the power from unipolarity to the multipolarity. Joining us, the students of the international relation from the various cities, from the various states. First of all, thank you very much, Turga, joining us from Azerbaijan.
Thank you for having me.
Joining us, Amna Asif from Pakistan. Thank you, Amna.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Joining us, Frankis from Philippines. Thank you, Frankis.
Thank you for having me.
And joining us, Ankit Kumar from India. Thank you, Ankit, for joining us.
For giving me this opportunity.
I would like to start with you, Amna. Can you please explain the balance of the power, the shifting of the power between the states? As you know that in the current era, the world has been transforming the power and the shifting politics between the state to states, and the international politics has been entered into it. So what is your opinion? You're the student of international relations, you're studying these factors around the world. So what is your opinion about the shifting of the power between the states? Can you please explain it?
Okay, so my sense to your question is that yes, now we are stepping into the world where the United States is no longer the only superpower left on the planet, because now there are so many other major powers that have been influencing the entire world system, the international system, the global politics actually. So yeah, now I think it's quite obvious that we have moved out from that unipolar world, and now we are entering into the multipolar world with the three major, the emerging superpowers that really matter for shaping the international system. One, of course, is the United States, which I believe will remain the most powerful state for the foreseeable future. But now there is China. China is the potential peer competitor to the United States because of its, its astounding economic growth through all of the BRA projects, through its exceptional other economic policies, and through its market policies as well. Even now, China is the #1 economy in terms of power purchasing parity. And I think that's the reason that most of the states have claimed China to be the, the economic black hole. So the point is that China is the real challenger to the United States. And also now we have Russia as well. Russia is again coming into the picture, like we have witnessed in this, in this current scenario of Ukraine crisis, that Russia is no less than these other two global powers, because it has outrightly rejected all the set patterns of America and NATO. So I think, yeah, and there are so I think Russia, this step of Russia was the clear-cut indication and the warning to the United States that the American-led unipolar world is actually practically over now. And there are so many regional powers as well, like we have India from the Asia Pacific region, the prime example. And also we have Brazil from Latin America. We have South Africa from the African region. These are the new kids in the block. And also in the Middle East, we have Turkey, we have UAE, and we have Saudi Arabia as well. These are not the global powers, but these are, these states have the utmost power and hold in their particular area of influence. So I think, yeah, this is now it's quite visible that world is again divided into multiple regions with the multiple powers. And this is actually the transition phase. This is actually the shift in the balance of power, where we have decisively moved from the unipolar world to the multipolar world.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, Turgut, my question is to you. How can you be seen it? It's why Amna explains very well about the USA hegemony and the Russia and the Brazil over there. So you are the student of international relations, you are studying in Korea. As you can explain it, the China hegemony over there, the world is going to be divided from the unipolarity to the multipolarity over there. So how can you be see this? It is going to be a make the peace in the world right now, because in this type of the situation is going to be occurring right now. How can you be see it?
Well, a lot of things are pointed out by Amna, so that we are seeing actually a shift of balance in the world at the moment. But I'd like to say that, like, for example, currently residenting in the country and one of the basically the three biggest countries in Asia, economy-wise speaking, in Korea, I can say that China is playing a huge role in the region, and we are seeing that actually eventually China could be the only country that could actually challenge the United States. But as of speaking now, despite we're seeing shifts, I must say that the USA at the moment is unparalleled to other countries in many ways. Yes, there are a lot of other countries that are growing faster and getting their economies bigger, their military power actually at a huge, scary level. But on the other hand, we cannot see the results yet. Yes, there are, because of actually China's recent developments, especially in the regional power aspects, how they have been cooperating, especially with the Central Asian countries. As you know, a lot of Central Asian countries are looking up for China now, as the region is dominated by Russia and China, and there's not much trust towards the US because of the roots of the region, as most of the Central Asian countries were actually coming from the USSR, and they're currently CIS countries at the moment. So the two regional and superpowers in the world are Russia and China. But since Russia is not, let's say, the modern big brother of the region, but China is, a lot of countries are turning to China. Yes, that's true. And Japan and Korea on the other side of the page, are accepting the big brother role, hegemony of China in the region. But at the same time, these two countries are actually one of the biggest allies of United States in the region. So when it comes to saying if China or Japan actually are looking at this in a great way, well, that's not the case, because China, Japan, and Korea are not actually sharing the same views on the region when it comes to politics, especially because at some points Chinese political priorities are actually collapsing with Korean and Japanese, as China's most of the politics that they are implementing these days are aiming to increase their power in the regions, simply speaking by how they are bullying the little country in Asia. As we know, like Taiwan is suffering a lot from China, and anything that comes from Chinese side to Taiwan is a huge threat to Japan and Korea as well, because these countries don't actually want China's development in an aggressive way, because that in the long run actually could be a problem for them as well. In other words, I must say that these two countries do know that China is doing a lot of things in the region, and they are growing faster and faster. And because of the recent years where the United States have actually shown some weak points towards the world countries, they have lost a bit trust. But the recent war that is going on between Ukraine and Russia could be actually a turning point for the United States to gain back the trust and confidence in the eyes of the other countries that are in the region. And I would say that the decision of that war, if Ukraine wars, with the great amount of help coming from the United States, actually United States could gain its allies and countries back in the Asia as well. And China actually could be getting a second hand out of it. So as of moment, I must say, we need to wait a little bit to say actually if China is taking over the United States role in the Asia before we actually decide, because there is a shift in the global balance, but it hasn't been completed, and it can be changed anytime. As we know, the war is still going on, and China so far hasn't been contributing much, as they're trying to keep it neutral, but the US is trying to do a lot. And if the war ends up well for Ukraine, I would say, then it means the United States is actually influencing a lot, and unipolarity is actually still confirmed for them as of the moment.
Okay. Frankis, as you know, that Philippines is not a powerful state as compared with other states. Like Philippines has not economically stable as like in other states over there. So as a Filipinians, you are studying the international relation over there. This Philippines having a connectivity with other states over with an economic activity. So how can you state this toward the multipolar system that in which prospect is that you think that the much powerful countries are going to be make the field with the lowest countries like the Philippines, like they are using like the punching bags over there?
Okay. In response to that, there are many instances in which a country which is powerful could get under the skin of other countries, such as, for example, unfair bilateral debt traps. Well, let's just not into that. What we have to understand is that while it is true that there are countries which are wise enough in order to determine regarding the specifics or this regarding the specific provisions of those particular threats. And that's exactly the direction that the Philippines is heading, considering that it is the election period is nearing the Philippines. So we're going to be electing our president, vice presidents, and the new sets of senators. One of the best strategy, they say, if you are a developing or a least developed countries, is that you do not necessarily have to support or absolutely support one country to another. Hence, being a relatively weaker country, but a country that has something to offer on the table could actually be an advantage. Why? Because powerful countries are going to give their attention. They are going to court you by this, fancy of opportunities, fancy political offerings, legal agreements, and so on and so forth. So, if a country will be able to play it right, it can remain as neutral as possible while at the same time benefiting from other countries. Just like what the Philippines is doing on some other aspects, it gets benefits from that of China, from that of Philippines, and recently the war that happened in Mindanao, the assistance of Russia has also been acknowledged towards that. So I think that's one of the frameworks and strategies that other relatively weaker countries must adapt and standardize, and to those countries which are already applying it, it must be mastered. Because in such as the Philippines, we I'm not basically saying that we have already mastered the art of negotiation or the logistics of this type of political strategy, but we're already getting in there. Because in that way, even if a country is relatively weak, it can still benefit from that of this
Okay.
multilateral,
Okay.
multipolar, huge countries.
Okay. Ankit, what do you think? Why the country is shifting from unipolarity to the multipolarity? What do you think about it? What is the biggest reason behind the countries? It's an economic interest, it's in a territorial interest. What is the reason behind it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the main reason is that every country wanted to be the superpower in the whole world so that they can dominate all over the world. If I talk about this, like country like America, they have been always been one of the superpower in all over the world till now. And even nowadays, they have been started uh, like trying to capture all of the parts of the European continent. That's why they have actually given a good hand to Ukraine and other European countries to be a part of that country. Because if any country would be in good power, they can do and can capture all over the part, because every place everyone wanted to be in power, it will help us you to grow, and even it will give you more opportunity, not even for your specific country citizens, even you will be also renowned all over the world. And if I talk about a country like India, which is not a superpower country, but it should, but here people have been always following India, even all over the world, know about the power and economic sector of India. So I think the countries who have been shifted, who wanted to be shift to unipolar from multipolar, is because they wanted to gain the knowledge, and even in this way they will be able to increase their economy, and even in this way their GDP and other factors can be increased. And even lot of the immigrants who have been living in another country, they will also find that country to be a good developed country, and they can be also shift to that country, and that is also going to help that particular country to be grow in economic sector, even in development sector as well. That
Okay.
is the reason, I guess.
So this you have the floor. You want to respond on that question. So why the country has been shifting from unipolarity to a multipolar world? What's the reason behind it?
Well, if we try to deconstruct the question towards that of the circumstances being faced by the respective countries, I believe that it is the one of the most fundamental reasons is due to the continuous quest for growth and development. Well, while it is not absolutely true that every country wants the betterment of its society, because there are some exemptions, right? There are 2 to 3 countries somewhere in there. But generally speaking, like 95%, around 95%, every country would want the welfare of their citizens one way or another. And on the process of development, there's this so-called leaving a mark internally and externally. One way or another, a country will be able to like 90% achieve what needs to be done internally or on their respective jurisdiction. So what happens next after that? What happens next? What are we gonna do with our next resources then? Just keep it. Remember that the resources are should not be kept on a treasure box, something like that. It must be used, it must be circulated. Funds, money, and other resources must be efficiently recognized and utilized and allocated. That's the reason why other countries, upon being able to do much of their individual economic standings, go out and then create initiatives that could create ripples, not only for them, not only for their respective regions, but also towards that of the whole globe. Another thing, though, is that if you are already a country that has already developed, one way or another, you will be able to feel this, that there is some sort of need or there is this moral responsibility. So it all boils down to the big brother sort of setup or narrative, right? That you feel somehow obliged to help these least developed countries, not only because they need it, but also because there are other countries which are already far ahead that could be potential threats towards that of these least developed countries or countries which need help. It always once again boils down towards that of biases, right? That okay, um, all things considered, evil as we are, at least we are not evil compared to the at least you are not that evil compared to that of other countries. Um, something a bias that is something like that. And lastly, though, is it is simply because another reason is that it is simply because of the fact that countries at the end of the day would simply want to leave a mark in history. They want to be remembered, they want to be acknowledged, and if we are going to be putting a fast forward on the timeline of existence of humanity, these countries that are relatively ahead, like for example USA, China, Russia, France, Germany, and so on and so forth, they want to be recorded as countries who actually did something in order to improve the existence and welfare of humanity. That's why they conduct these humanitarian efforts. That's why they conduct programs and activities that promote inclusive growth towards that of countries across all countries, and that's why they are trying so hard in order to maintain international security across all borders.
Okay. Turgut, as we can see in the world, the power is shifting, like the Gulf is playing very essential role between the shifting of the powers in the states over there, because the some state has burned the bridges like Turkey, they are ready to burn the bridges with like UAE, and the UAE also we burn the bridges with like economically and the transportation over there with the Turkey, but they are making the alliances with Israel because, as you know, they're the Muslim and the Israeli conflict, the Gulf and the other states also be there. The Turgut, is we can see what is your opinion about that is going to be make and other power shifting in a Gulf situation right now because they are making the to in some situation over there in the last day earlier they are KSA and UAE are refused to attend the call of the Bidens over there though, so you can think that the power is shifting and the world is going to be in a new phase.
That's actually a good point because I'm not from the Gulf, but I'm from the very close country to the Gulf. Then we often get the effects of things happening in that region affecting us as well. We do know that Turkey is not a global power, but it's a huge regional power these days. And because it's regional location as well, a lot of countries, when it comes to actually deal with a lot of things, they always actually don't go hard on Turkey. Yeah, Turkey has received sanctions before, even from the US, despite it has the second biggest army in the NATO. It's probably the biggest second hand and tool in NATO. US sometimes have to actually put some sanctions against it. China is actually not against Turkey, but it's one of the few ways that China can reach actually the European region as well. So they are not touching Turkey either. Russia, when it comes to its own interests, is also not touching Turkey. Like Turkey is basically in the middle of, let's say, three big powers, but they're managing somehow. And I would say when it comes to solving a lot of problems in the Gulf, Turkey is probably one of the decision-making countries there, perhaps due to them being eligible to hold a lot of relations with a lot of big countries at the same time and never coming actually under the fire of these countries. Because after all, they all want to squeeze Turkey a little bit, but they need Turkey. Even if it's for dirty work, when it comes to doing the countries below Turkey, even if it's for something good, whenever it's good for them, they call the Turkey is being actually quite cooperative and being in the Western standards. Maybe when it comes to not their standards, they can call the Turkeys being on their own. They have some anarchy and stuff. They like to call it different things. And recently, actually, we do know that Israel has been having a lot of bad relations with Turkey, especially after the time when there was a situation where Israeli army actually had to kill a few number of actual Turkish soldiers, and after that things even got worse. And as far as I know, I might be making a mistake with the years, but it's been 14 years since they closed the embassy in Turkey, or it's been 14 years since the president of Israel actually traveled back to Turkey. And recently, actually a few days ago, Israeli president actually visited Erdogan in Turkey. And that is to say, that happened actually, many say unspokenly, it happened due to the president of Azerbaijan being the player in the between. So that actually explains that the Gulf countries do actually receive some effect from the Caucasus countries that used to be in CIS. They used to be in the USSR actually. And why Azerbaijan played a role there is because Azerbaijan is like the second brother, like the brother country of Turkey. And at the same time, it's in amazing relationship with Israel as well. So how a Muslim country that is the brother country of Turkey is actually holding great relations with Israel? Well, that comes from the roots that Azerbaijan actually has always been a great place for a lot of Jewish people, and it has never been actually a fireplace for them. It's been a friendly nation and stuff. And that is playing a great role in today's politics, where Azerbaijan is actually able to make some political decision making roles between Turkey and Israel, which is changing a huge shift in the Gulf countries. And if Turkey and Israel are to actually in somehow unite their power, it could actually make a huge shift against Iran and UAE, I would say the second biggest powers in the Gulf countries. And we do know that China is trying to actually enlarge in their influenced countries by providing military help both to UAE and to Iran. They're doing this thing in a very, I would say, US way, where you shake their hand, give them gun, then you shake the second country's hand, give them gun too, and say that we support both of you in many ways. So I see that China is playing a role in the Gulf, and these countries are changing a shift. I think Turkey is not going to become a global power maybe for the next 5 years, but their regional power is going to keep them a huge player in the field, as they are in NATO with the second biggest army, and they're bettering their relations with the Gulf countries. So in this phase, polarity would be a question for me, that I don't think it's going to happen in that region. These are regional powers, but they're not going to become, because after all, a lot of things are controlled by China and the US and even Russia.
Okay.
Because
Yes, Asif, my question is to you. As we can know that the East Asia are pairing up within different states right now. And it's been a lacuna or the dilemma within our societies and the different states over there. So the why the great power rivalry are practically strong in the East Asia, how can we explain it? The several states are being inputting their efforts into it for the hegemony over there and the shifting of the power in the East Asia. So my question is to you, why the great power rivalry are practicing strong in East Asia?
Okay, East Asia is a very important region because I think all the global powers have some direct and some indirect influence in this region. Just like most importantly, China is present in this region, and Russia's boundaries also touch this region, and America's bases are located there. So in this way, indirectly, America is also present in this region. So America has also made some alliances, like American alliance with South Korea and American alliance with Thailand, etc. So in these states, America launched its military bases just to contain China and just to prevent China from growing economically, because China was increasing its trade and was growing day by day. So that was the real threat for the United States, and because in this region, there are some important straits that are very important in terms of trading, especially for China, like the Barents Strait, which connect Asia with North America. And also in the Northeast Asia, there is the longest strait of the world, the Strait of Malacca, through which China trade with so many other countries. So America basically wanted to curb that. That's the reason America has created the trade barriers, and America has formulated its containment policy against China. So I think that shows the power rivalry, and the historical accounts show um, also show the multipolarity in the region, like the Cold War and the war between South Korea and North Korea in that period. And also Japan is also located in that region. So I think this region is very important, and these all states are very powerful. And I think in this region, some states claim power on the basis of their geo-economics, and some are promoting their ideology, and some are using their military forces, the hard power. So I think there are multiple factors involved in this region. So that's the reason that the power competition and the power rivalry is particularly strong in this region than the others. So yeah.
Okay, Frankis, can you believe it? The shifting of the power is affect the economic stability of the states. Like if we can see the shifting of the power between the states are the essential factor, because the economic factor is really an essential factor and the major cause between the state from the shifting of the power from to make the alliances. As we can see, the rivals are now in the new world, they are making the alliances with each other. So can you be thinking that the alliance in the shifting of the power affect the economic system as well as the territorial system between the states?
Yes, I believe it absolutely affects the economic factor and economic performance of individual countries and the globe as a whole. We'll just take a look at what is happening on the global global organizations or the international community, just a simple decision or just a simple snap of the fingers or a simple veto from our superpower countries, it can cause obliteration of human lives, and it can also cause the saving and the saving, repatriation, and so on and so forth. It can. So what I'm trying to say is that um, these economic powers have the power to save or destroy one countries, to harm or to help them flourish one way or another. So there are other aspects to be considered on this particular instances. However, one thing that I would like to talk about, though, in order for us to further have a better um, a better discussion on this particular matter, is the principle of trade-offs. Earlier, you were asking if the shifting from a unipolar to a multipolarity type of a reality would be beneficial. The answer to that, if we cannot force each other to give a absolute yes or no, because at the end of the day, there are always going to be risks and there are always going to be trade-offs. So that is what we have to understand first. Secondly, let's try to delve further. What differentiates unipolarity and multipolarity in the very first place? We can take a look at it by determining simply the fundamental differences, the pros and the cons. Well, if we are going to take a look at the history when we were still having a unipolarity or a US dominated world, well, if realistically speaking and specifically speaking, that's the US dominating the having dominant effects or influence to the whole world. The pros or the advantage of this is there's less bureaucracy. So it can be construed into an advantage because just in case something bad happens, or just in case there is an opportunity that needs to be seized immediately, there's no more need for further paperwork or for further deliberations. We can already seize the opportunity at hand. We can already take action immediately. If there could be some paperwork or logistics, it will be reduced. However, the cons or the negative effect on that particular matter is there will be no sets of checks and balances. Since we are in debt or we are dominated by a single powerful country, of course, it is very hard for the constituents to oppose because one way or another, they have their leverage, one way or another in the form of carrots or sticks towards us subordinate countries, which is actually the opposite of a multilateral country, no, of a multipolar type of a reality or type of society. Let's start with the cons. While it is true that there will be more bureaucracy, sometimes there is even toxic bureaucracy. Once again, taking example on the taking example on some decisions or some real instances of what's happening on the United Nations Security Council, that there are proven instances or situations that the veto power has been used in which they should have not been used in the very first place.
Okay.
Let's just leave it at that. However, the pros of this one is that there will be further checks and balances. So now we can see US checking on China and Russia and vice versa, so on and so forth.
Okay. My last question to all of you, because my program is going to be the end. The last question is done from Turgut you. What your opinion? What your think that which world is going to be more peaceful? Because we can see in the now era, current era, the world is going to be dominating. The state is going to be dominate the other. They are being the crumble with each other. They are going to be the crumble with the other emotions. They are going to be killing the people, slaughtering the people. We have the several examples like Russia and the Ukraine conflict that recently will be happen, and we have the several examples around the world. So what do you think about it? Which world is going to be more peaceful for the people, for the civilians, for the peoples who are living in the states, unipolar or the multipolar, and why?
Okay. Well, that's, I think, a really interesting point here. I think, in fact, both unipolar and multipolar could be a peaceful world for the citizens of this world. But the trick in this thing is that what would it take us to actually get to that point? Speaking frankly, if all the countries, let's say not all, but like maybe 10, 20 countries are going to equally be sharing their powers in the world to be creating peace, it would take some actual time and a lot of actual work towards it. And nobody is giving guarantee that this work is going to be safe for the citizens. As you know, some countries might be actually doing it aggressively. Some might be like, yeah, we would like to make peace. But in order to make peace, they might bring their army to say that we'll bring peace towards this. You give me that. Some neighbors might not be happy with their neighbors actually developing into one of these multipolar countries that will be ruling, because their neighbor would be stronger. And at some point, the weaker neighbor would have to say yes. On the other hand, where we have only one country who is the leading big brother, in my sense, is controlling everyone. As of moment, I feel like if the big brother stays, like the United States stay, and other countries develop under United States and prosper, it would be probably easier because there's already a system that is existing, and we don't have to compete. We don't have to challenge other countries for this. On the other hand, saying that why does US only have to be the country who has it, and we should do it as well? Okay, that's also good. But then, because we don't have such system, it would take us years to reach that, and we don't know in what ways we would receive it, because every society, every nation is going to be having a different opinion. So when there's different opinion between the nations, nations fight, either politically or in a military way. That is why it's very hard to say which one would be. But if we want to keep things now, maybe keeping the unipolarity actually would be more beneficial as of the moment. But maybe after 20 years, if countries decide to be more peace loving, then we could switch to that as well. That's my opinion.
Okay. Frankis, what's your opinion about that? Which world is going to be more peaceful and more safe for the civilians, unipolar or a multipolar, and why?
Well, taking a look at the vast instances of what happened in the past and what we are experiencing right now, I think that it is relatively better if you are going to proceed with a society or a reality that is multipolar. It is because of number one, just like what I've mentioned before, the existence of checks and balances. So if we would try to further dig deeper, what I'm trying to say in here is that we, in a multipolar type of reality or society, there will be a spectrum. So we're talking about spectrum, there will be a huge or a wide array of opinions, perspectives, beliefs, ideas, and strategies in which, yes, well, it is true that it could be quite complicated and quite messy if it is still on the ideation process. It will all, at the end of the day, constitute towards that of better strategies and relatively better policies compared to that of policies which were just basically formed by 1 to 2 constituents or stakeholders. Aside from that, is of course there will be a sort of conscience that will act from one country to another. So by this I mean one country being a conscience of another, asking questions, questions that are important, that are intrinsically important and should not be downplayed. Questions such as, why are we doing this in the first place? Or is this really necessary? Or is this the right time to do this types of corrective actions or strategies or programs or activities, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Nasif, what are you thinking? Which system is going to be more safe for the people and the peace, make the stability in the world, unipolar or the multipolar, and why?
I think multipolar world would be, would be more peaceful and more safe for the states that are weaker than the other global powers. And I think there would be, if there would be an effective system, then I think there would be the more balance in the world. So yeah, I think the other person has explained it quite effectively.
Okay. Okay. Ankit, what are you thinking? Which power and which system is going to be more peaceful for the states, unipolar or a multipolar, and why?
Yeah, as everybody has already mentioned that I personally also believe that multipolar plays an important role, because you know what, in multipolar we are actually distributing the power between all the states. That indicates that we are treating all the states equally, and even we are giving equal power, and that actually help us all the citizens and everybody to be more depth into inclusivity and cultural differences. Because multipolar people will don't have differentiate factors. People will not differentiate on the basis of gender, religion, and all, because we are treating equally among others. But if let's suppose if there is a world of unipolar where the power should be given to only one country, where uh, it can lead to a threaten or a war, which we are all I think between current scenario of Russia and Ukraine, because Russia is dominating all over the world, and it has been already a unipolar country, and even it has a lot of power. That is why a like country like Russia has already dominated the Ukraine. But if that power has been already distributed among all the parts of the European countries and even in Asia, then this war wouldn't be possible, and this scenario we won't be able to see, which we always call as third world war. So I personally believe that the world should be more peaceful and civilians will be feel much more safer when the world will be multipolar. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much to all of you to joining my program and make my program is more knowledgeable for my audience. As we know that the world is shifting, and this is the harsh reality. Some states are being shifting on economic basis, and some states are being shifting in a territorial basis. But the world is shifting, and this has been the harsh reality. The world is shifting on the dead bodies of the people, because one state considering the other state is a punching bag. They are treating the states like a punching bag, and it's time to let the cat out of the bag. And this is the reality between the states. Thank you very much, Thurgot, Amna, Frankis, and Ankit for joining me and give your opinion, which is more knowledgeable for me, for my audience as well. Thank you very much for joining us. And now the program time is going to be end. We will meet again. And thank you very much to all of you for joining me.